He handed me the letter on my own porch like a warning flare and didn't blink when I read the line. Any presence by Calvin J. Brooks at 1287 East Larchmont will be treated as trespass. The house I painted, the garden my wife planted, reduced to a crime scene if I took one step too far. Betrayal has a quiet sound, paper sliding out of an envelope, a son saying he meant well, a signature that isn't yours deciding your future. That was the moment the fracture went deep, when I learned my name had been used without me and my history fenced off with a ribbon like luggage. From there, I had to start over, not with rage, but with proof, breath, and the stubborn work of taking my story back. Before we dive into today's story, take a moment to share where you're watching from. We love seeing how our stories bring people together from every corner of the world. Your thoughts and comments are what make this community so special, and we're truly grateful to have you here. If you haven't already, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a new story filled with drama, resilience, and unexpected twists. Now, settle in, get comfortable, and maybe grab your favorite drink because this is a tale you won't want to miss. Let's get started. I wake before the house the way I did on the line when a whistle set the pace for men and metal. The kitchen in my son's place glows a soft blue from the fridge display, quartz counters catching the first seam of daylight like ice. I grind dark roast by hand because the sound steadies me, then set the old mocha pot on the induction and wait for the friendly sputter that says the day can start. Steam rises with a bittersweet bloom, and for a minute the room smells like the Detroit bungalow, where Renee would hum along to Motown while I fixed a sticking window or tightened a cabinet hinge. Habit is a quiet companion. It fits any room. I am 66, a retired automan with wrists that remember torque specs and a back that marks the years by model cycles. 4 years a widower. Last spring, I packed what I could into plastic bins and drove to Columbus to help my boy Jordan with the house and their little one, Miles. Just until things settle, I told the mirror. Things don't settle. They learn to balance. And some of us stand with our arms out, steadying what leans. It felt decent to be needed and cheaper than missing people who were no longer in the next room. By the time the mocha sings, I've set out a lunch for Miles. Apple slices in a snap top, a row of tiny crackers, a folded napkin tucked like a note, and wipe the water spots from the sink. Sienna, my daughter-in-law, likes the counters dry and the drain basket empty. She schedules satisfaction, color-coding the family calendar on the stainless door, blue for Jordan's site meetings, green for daycare drop-off, yellow for her hot yoga and meal prep. I don't belong to a color. I'm the blank space that keeps the colors from bleeding. In the living room, the rug still bears the faint ruts of last night's Grand Prix. Miles turns 3 trucks into a mountain pass and a tunnel under the sofa leg, his tongue poking out in concentration. He presses the blue truck into my palm, always the blue, and I pretend to lose until the last corner where we tie. "Grandpa, race," he says, the syllables bouncing off his grin. "1 lap," I answer, and we both break that promise with a laugh we don't bother to hide. "Again," he squeals. "Last lap, champ," I say, and he accepts that as truth, at least for now. Jordan's office is a glassed-in corner off the hallway. His laptop throws out a rain of keystrokes after dinner, a private weather pattern. He works for Northland Redevelopment Partners, a name that sounds like money smiling through perfect teeth. He says they revitalize aging corridors, bring in lighting and cafes, make things walkable. I remember when we called that a neighborhood. He speaks in floor area ratios and stakeholder buy-in. I speak in socket sizes and thread pitch. We admire each other's fluency and still miss meanings in the gaps. The garage holds the life I couldn't leave and the life I'm learning to borrow. 2 mountain bikes hang like antlers above a rack of dumbbells and a crate of chalked kettlebells. Between them sits a cardboard box with our wedding album inside, the cover scuffed, a corner softened from years of thumbing. I took it out once last month, planning to set it by the TV where Miles could meet his grandmother's smile the way it tamed a room. I slid the box back when I noticed the bikes needed air. It felt easier to fix what asked than to open what ached. Coffee in hand, I stand at the window and watch the maples along the curb leak their last colors into the gutter. Columbus is tidy in a way that makes even the trash look rehearsed. The jogger with reflective laces passes at the same time every morning. A school bus sighs to a stop, then breathes again. Inside, the dishwasher hums like a small, satisfied animal. I have learned to read the house by sound, the HVAC's low sermon, the dishwasher's hymn, the click Jordan's keyboard makes when he's annoyed, the weightless thrum of Sienna's phone when a post lands just right. "Thanks for keeping the counters dry, Calvin," Sienna says, setting a tray like a scene change. "Just a habit," I answer, and mean it. She photographs the neat rows of glass containers, adds text about systems saving time, and I nod as if I were part of that system instead of the man who oils it. I keep busy because busy feels like belonging. I oil the hinges before they squeal. I set the mower to the right notch for the season and draw clean lines that please me. I change the batteries in the smoke detectors before the chirp can accuse anyone of forgetting. No one asks, and that is its own pleasure. It is also how a man like me learns to disappear while still standing in the middle of the room. After breakfast, I buckle Miles into his car seat and drive the 2 miles to daycare, his small fingers drumming my forearm to a song he invents as we go. He likes when I take the scenic route, which here means one extra subdivision with ducks that haven't learned fear. I tell him about carburetors and explain again why our truck is not the kind that flies. At drop-off, he kisses his own palm and stamps my cheek. "See you, Grandpa," he says. "Be good," I tell him, and the teacher waves us both forward like we're part of the morning show. Back home, the sun finally reaches the edge of the counter and makes a bright line like chalk. I wipe it anyway. The house smells faintly of lemon cleaner and coffee. My hands hold a ghost of machine oil no soap will ever fully erase. Jordan texts from the office. "Running late, Dad. Don't wait up." "Got it," I reply, and set chicken to thaw in cold water, a habit from the years when Renee could walk in humming and turn an ordinary Tuesday into a small celebration. When the light turns the color of weak tea, I pull the album from the box and lift its scuffed lid. Renee laughs in every other photo, head tipped back, shoulders easy, as if gravity loved her more than the rest of us. In one picture, she's ironing while I pretend to sing into the spray bottle. The curtains are the deep red she insisted on, the room full of that lived-in hush you can't buy. Our red brick Detroit house had a way of keeping time. Winters stacked along the window glass, summers baked into the porch steps, a calendar written in paint and light. Evening is a practiced routine. I sweep crumbs into my palm so the vacuum won't have to talk. I cycle laundry and fold towels with the edges aligned to Sienna's exactitude. The mail sits in a neat bar on the console. Coupons, a glossy catalog, a dentist reminder for Miles. When I can't find something to improve, I polish the faucet until it throws back a version of my face that looks slightly more awake. "You do too much," I tell that face. "Or not enough," it answers. We call that equilibrium and pretend it's peace. Night lowers itself and the house switches to another set of sounds. Jordan's keyboard begins its weather again. The TV whispers a documentary to nobody. Upstairs, a white noise machine sews Miles's sleep shut. I stand at the sink and let the water run just long enough to carry the last suds away. The stainless bowl clears, an eye that blinks, then goes still. I buff it with the dishcloth until it squeaks, the small satisfaction of a job with a finish line. "Grandpa, race!" drifts down the stairs, a drowsy echo from earlier that makes me smile without choosing to. "Tomorrow," I call up, just loud enough, and I set the blue truck on the coffee table where it can spot me first thing. "Deal," he mumbles, already sliding back under. I am useful here. I am the steady hum under the song. Some days that's almost the same as being seen. Some nights it isn't. I rinsed the mocha pot, dry each piece, and set it on the stove the way a mechanic lays out parts for morning assembly. Coffee covers a lot in a home. Garlic after chili, wet dog after rain, last night's takeout, warmed again. Tonight, the smell hangs sweet and dark over the counters I've just dried, but somewhere beneath it, thin as paper and just as sharp, I swear I catch the faint scent of paperwork as if an envelope were already moving toward us through the mail, bringing a kind of news coffee can't hide. The envelope arrived on a Thursday, folded between a grocery flyer and a coupon booklet, the kind of ordinary stack you don't expect to change a day. My name was printed in a blocky font that didn't belong to anyone I knew. The return address said City of Detroit, Housing and Community Development. The postmark was smudged, but the orange forwarding label carried my new address here in Columbus. I turned it over a few times as if the paper could tell me what it wanted before I opened it. At the post office, I asked the clerk whether forwarded mail from a city department usually meant trouble. She smiled the kind of smile that's half training, half pity. Usually means somebody's still trying to find you, she said. That didn't sound like trouble, but it didn't sound like nothing either. I thanked her, stepped outside, and sat in the cab of my truck. The vinyl seat had cracked near the edge, the foam showing like a scar. I balanced the envelope on my knee and slid it with the letter opener I kept near the visor. A packet slid out, 5 pages, thick paper, stamped Anchor Redevelopment Program. The letterhead carried the city seal, crisp enough to feel official. The first page welcomed me to a new era of neighborhood investment. The second page changed its voice, all fine print and narrow margins. Transfer of interest / power of attorney, draft. My name was typed neatly, Calvin J. Brooks, and at the bottom, a signature that looked close to mine but leaned left instead of right. The C looped too high. It was as if my hand had remembered the form but forgotten the feeling. My throat tightened in that small way you notice before the mind finds a reason. The form mentioned expedited processing upon authorization. Dates were filled in already, 2 weeks ago. Somebody had jump-started something using my name. I read the sentence twice. Upon receipt of your signature, the transfer will be finalized in accordance with Municipal Code 18.2. I couldn't remember signing anything in months. I folded the papers back into the envelope and placed it on the passenger seat like it might break. The air smelled faintly of dust and old oil. The sunlight caught the dashboard dust, turning it gold. I thought of the red brick house in Detroit, boarded windows down the street, Renee's lilac bush still holding out near the porch. The city had called it underutilized property in a letter once. Renee had called it home. By the time I reached the house, Jordan's car was already in the drive. Through the kitchen window, I saw him half turned toward his laptop, shirt sleeves rolled, earbuds in. I walked in with the envelope in my hand. He looked up and gave me that quick, distracted grin that men give each other when they're both tired and trying not to start anything. "Hey, Dad. Everything okay?" "Got some mail forwarded from Detroit," I said. "Looks like city paperwork about the house." He glanced at the logo. "Probably just some old notices." "They've been running a program to clean up abandoned lots." "It says power of attorney," I told him. "Has my name on it. Even a signature." He frowned, then smiled again, smaller. "That's odd. I'll check with my team tomorrow. We do work with that department sometimes." Sienna walked in then, laptop balanced on one arm, phone in the other. "Detroit's finally trying to fix those neighborhoods," she said. "That old house isn't worth keeping, right?" I didn't answer right away. She slid a printed list toward me. Things to fix this week. Smoke detectors, the porch light, Miles's toy shelf. "You're amazing with this stuff," she added, voice warm, efficient. "Yeah," I said, "guess I am." She kissed Jordan's temple, then disappeared upstairs. The kitchen smelled of lemon spray and chicken thawing in a bowl. I laid the envelope next to the to-do list. One said transfer of interest, the other said replace porch bulb. Maybe both meant the same thing. Move on, keep the light working. When the house went quiet, I opened the garage door and stood among the boxes again. The air held that mix of dust and detergent that always brings Renee's voice closer. I pulled down the wedding album box, though what I wanted wasn't the photos. Under the plastic sleeve lay a folded scrap of paper, yellowed and soft at the edges. Her handwriting leaned right, strong and certain. Don't let anyone decide for you. I sat on the step that led from the garage into the kitchen and held the note above the envelope. The papers weighed nearly the same. Her words fit the silence like a key. I hadn't realized how much I'd been waiting for permission to doubt. A sound broke the stillness, bare feet on the tile. Miles stood there in his dinosaur pajamas, eyes squinting against the light. "Grandpa," he said softly. "Home?" "Yeah, buddy," I whispered. "Home." He climbed into my lap, head heavy against my chest, asleep again in a minute. I carried him upstairs, careful not to wake him, then came back down and looked at the kitchen table. The envelope sat neatly beside Renee's note. I lined them edge to edge, as if that symmetry could make the question smaller. I thought about what Jordan had said. I'll check with my team. Maybe he would. Maybe he already had, but the date on the form was older than that promise, and the signature had too much confidence to be guesswork. The night stretched out thin. Through the window, the streetlight painted the driveway in yellow stripes. My truck keys lay on the counter, catching a glint from the overhead bulb. I slid them into my pocket without thinking. I told myself it was only to move them, but the weight settled there like a decision half made. Upstairs, the white noise machine hummed again, sewing Miles's dream shut. Down here, the house felt borrowed, warm but not mine, kind but temporary. I pressed Renee's note flat against the table, traced the ink where her pen had pressed hardest. "Don't let anyone decide for you." I folded the note once, slid it into my wallet behind my driver's license, then gathered the envelope and slipped it back into its sleeve. The paper crackled faintly, like static before a signal clears. Tomorrow I would drive to the city office listed on the form, ask questions, maybe make a fool of myself. But tonight, I let the engine of the idea idle. The sense that something had been decided without me, and that whatever was taken, I'd have to cross miles to claim it back. When I turned off the lights, the counters glowed faintly from the moonlight slipping through blinds. The lemon scent lingered, masking the darker smell of old paper and ink. I told myself it was just mail, just misunderstanding, but deep down I knew that once a man smells paperwork with his name bent wrong, peace doesn't come easy again. The road hums like a promise I don't trust. Morning breaks pale over the highway, the kind of light that makes everything look temporary. I fill the thermos, tuck Renee's note into my wallet, and slide the envelope beside it. The house is still asleep when I start the truck. The engine coughs once, then settles into that old rhythm that reminds me of who I used to be, steady, predictable, built to run. Traffic thins outside Columbus. Billboards drift past like unasked questions, personal injury lawyers, debt relief, a preacher offering salvation by text. The radio can't hold a station, only static and the rise of talk shows that sound like arguments rehearsed. I turn it off. The cab fills with the scent of coffee and vinyl. I think about Jordan's voice, calm and professional. I'll check with my team. Maybe he already has. Maybe that's the problem. Hours slide by. The road straightens into memory. Every mile north is another layer of paint stripped off. I start seeing names I know. Toledo, River Rouge, 8 Mile, until the skyline of Detroit pulls itself up from the haze, the old factories outlined like broken teeth. I used to believe cities couldn't forget the hands that built them. I was wrong. My neighborhood is quieter than I remember, like sound itself has moved away. Half the houses are gone, lots scraped flat and fenced. The red brick stands 3 doors from the corner, smaller somehow, fenced off with chain link and a yellow sign that reads Anchor Redevelopment Property. The notice on the post glints against the afternoon sun. At the bottom, printed in neat black letters, Authorized Partner, Northland Redevelopment Partners. For a moment, I can't breathe. The air smells of rust and cold dirt, the ghost of lilac from the bush Renee planted 20 years ago. It's leafless now, a bare skeleton gripping the soil. I press my hand to the fence. The metal bites through my glove. "Didn't expect to see you, Cal." The voice drifts from across the street. Vernon Tate leans on his porch rail, same cap, same stoop of the shoulders. Time has softened him, but not much. "Guess I didn't expect to be here either," I say. He chuckles, a short, dry sound. "Heard they was moving quick. Said new ownership, some big outfit. Trucks came, measured everything. Your boy's company name on one of them clipboards, I think." My jaw tightens before I can stop it. "You sure?" "Northland, right?" That's what it said. He squints toward the sign. "Didn't know it had anything to do with you." Neither did I. He nods like that explains everything. World changes fast. You blink, they got your porch. We stand a while, wind brushing between us. He looks smaller than the man who used to fix his car with my tools. When I finally turn back to the house, he waves a quiet goodbye and disappears inside. I walk the perimeter. The fence rattles at each step. The front porch is gone. Only the concrete base remains. I kneel near the gate to read the second notice. It lists a permit number, a project timeline, and a projected completion date 6 months from now. The owner signature box has my name, digital mark certified. Someone has already verified me out of existence. I take photos of everything, the sign, the fence, the boarded windows, even the curb number faded to almost nothing. My hands shake, but the phone stays steady. Habit again. You measure twice before you cut, even when it's grief. At City Hall, the clerk at the redevelopment counter barely looks up. Fluorescent light washes everyone the same shade of tired. "Power of attorney already processed," she says, tapping keys. "Verified digitally 2 weeks ago." "By who?" She tilts the screen. "Same name as yours. Must have been online submission. You can file a dispute form if you think it's an error." "Will that stop the demolition?" She shakes her head. "Not likely." "But you can try." "Yeah," I say. "I bet I can." She slides a business card across the counter. Generic city email, no name. I pocket it, thank her, and walk out before my temper finds volume. Outside, the wind off the river smells of cold iron. The skyline has changed. Half the windows are dark, half mirrored. Somewhere in those offices, someone drew my house as a line item, a square to color in for progress. I drive back to the block, park across from the fence, and kill the engine. The silence folds around me like insulation. From here, I can see the kitchen window where Renee used to rest her elbows. Watching me mow crooked lines into the lawn, I can still hear her voice. "Never let them rewrite our names." I whisper it back, though no one's listening. A surveyor in a hard hat walks by, clipboard in hand. He nods politely. "Sir, we'll be clearing debris next week," he says, not realizing the debris is my life. "Yeah," I answer, "so I heard." He moves on, boots crunching gravel. I stare through the fence until the light begins to fade. The lilac bush bends with the wind, small branches scraping the chain link like fingernails. The anger doesn't come loud. It comes measured, like a mechanic checking pressure. I feel it tighten behind the ribs. I think about Jordan at his office, how his name might sit on some contract under mine. Maybe it's mistake, maybe it's something worse. Either way, I can't unsee that logo on the sign. I take one more photo and step back. The neighborhood hums with low traffic, the kind of background noise you stop hearing once you live in it. I breathe it in like medicine that tastes wrong. When I start the truck again, the dashboard clock reads 6:47. The sun drops behind the warehouses, painting the sky the color of old copper. I drive slowly past the house, window rolled down, air cutting sharp against my cheek. At the corner, I pull over and look once more through the rear-view mirror. The red brick glows in the last light, tired but still standing. I whisper, "Not yet gone." The words fog the glass, then vanish. By the time I hit the highway, the streetlights blur into one long ribbon. The thermos is empty and the radio static returns, softer this time, almost a heartbeat. I keep my eyes on the road, Renee's note heavy in my pocket, the photos safe on my phone. The fight hasn't started yet, but I can already feel it shifting gears. I woke before sunrise. The light that leaked under the blinds looked washed out, colorless, like it hadn't made up its mind to be day yet. The air smelled faintly of oil and cardboard. I went to the garage first. I kept my tools there, each one lined up with surgical neatness. Wrenches, drills, a saw I hadn't used in months. Order was the one thing I could still control. I spread the papers from Detroit on the workbench. The envelope, the photocopies, the city notice, the photos I'd printed last night. Renee's note sat in the center, the words, "Don't let anyone decide for you," cutting through the clutter like a compass needle. The coffee pot hissed in the kitchen. I brought a mug back out, sat on the stool, and started dialing numbers. The first was the City Housing Department. An automated voice thanked me for my patience and placed me on hold. After 12 minutes of looping piano music, a clerk answered only to transfer me again. By the third call, I knew the pattern: courtesy, delay, deflection. Each department claimed the other had authority. "You'll need to contact the redevelopment board, sir." "That form isn't handled here. We can't verify digital submissions." I scribbled notes in the margins of the notice, my handwriting turning sharper each time. It felt like tracing the outline of my own disappearance. At noon, I opened my laptop, hoping the city website might give me something concrete. The cursor blinked, impatient. I typed my parcel number, a PDF loaded, transfer pending. The signature block bore my name again, same bent C, same false confidence. Whoever had forged it wasn't guessing anymore. They were copying muscle memory. My phone buzzed with a reminder from the calendar Sienna shared, pick up Miles at 3. I stared at it longer than I should have. Family routines looked so innocent written down. Around 1, I reached a woman at the redevelopment board who actually sounded human. Her name was Dawn. I told her my case number, waded through the clicks of her keyboard. "Sir," she said, "I can't release personal data, but looks like the submission came through Northland Partners' internal portal." My heart slowed. "You sure about that?" "That's what it says on the record. Probably family authorization if you're connected to them." "I'm connected all right," I said, keeping my voice even. "I'm sorry, Mr. Brooks. I wish I could do more." "You've done enough," I answered, and meant it. When the line went dead, I sat for a full minute, listening to the quiet hum of the refrigerator through the garage wall. The world didn't end with a bang. It ended with paperwork. I printed the email confirmation and laid it next to Renee's note. The table in the kitchen became a crime scene. Photos, letters, sticky notes. I drew lines between them with a pencil, connecting names like suspects. In the center, I wrote Jordan. Sienna came downstairs while I was still at it. She wore a soft cardigan and that careful tone people use around grief. "You've been on the phone all morning," she said. "Trying to reach the city." "Any luck?" "Depends on your definition of luck." I turned the page toward her. "They said the paperwork came from Northland." "Jordan's firm." She hesitated, eyes flicking over the documents. "Maybe he did it for the right reasons, Cal. Maybe it's an investment thing. Cleanup, new start. He's been under pressure." I felt my voice harden. "Then he could have said something." She laid a hand on my shoulder. "Just breathe before you call him, okay?" I didn't promise. After she left, I sat staring at the phone. The contact list showed his name, Jordan Brooks, work. It looked foreign now, a stranger wearing my blood. I hit dial. The ringtone went on, then turned to voicemail. "You've reached Jordan Brooks. Leave a message." I didn't. I called again an hour later. Same result. Third time, straight to voicemail. I typed a text. "Need to talk. Important." The bubble stayed gray. By late afternoon, the kitchen light grew thin, stretching the papers into long shadows. I'd forgotten to eat. My hand trembled slightly when I picked up the mug. The coffee had gone cold. I poured it out and watched it swirl down the drain like oil. When Miles came home, I managed to smile. We built a small tower of blocks on the living room rug, his laughter bright enough to hurt. But every time a block fell, it sounded too much like the thud of a gavel. After he went to bed, I returned to the porch. The evening air was damp, the sky bruised purple at the edges. I could hear the highway hum miles away. I dialed Jordan again, straight to voicemail. The mechanical voice asked me to leave a message after the tone. I waited until the beep faded. "You did this," I whispered. "You could have told me." My voice cracked somewhere in the middle. I hung up before it could break again. I sat there for a long time, phone heavy in my hand, the porch boards creaking with each shift of weight. The street lamp flickered once, then steadied. Across the yard, the mailbox glowed faintly in its light, empty, waiting. Sienna peeked out the door but said nothing. The screen door clicked softly behind her when she went back in. I pulled Renee's note from my wallet, unfolded it under the porch light. The paper had grown soft at the creases. Her handwriting still held its strength. "Don't let anyone decide for you." I whispered it aloud. "Then I won't." The night deepened around me, patient and silent. Somewhere inside, the house shifted. Pipes settling, floorboards expanding, life carrying on. But I knew the quiet wasn't peace, it was pressure before the next move. Tomorrow I would find a lawyer. Tomorrow I'd start the paper war they didn't think I could fight. For now I watched the street lamp halo blur in my tired eyes and thought of the red brick house still standing against the wind. It wasn't gone yet, neither was I. I ironed a shirt I hadn't worn in years. The fabric smelled faintly of dust and starch. My hands moved slower than they used to. The motion was less about neatness, more about control. I folded Renee's note and slid it into my wallet, where it pressed against my chest like a heartbeat I could trust. The papers were stacked in a folder, each page a bruise I'd memorized. I placed them on the passenger seat of the truck, next to a thermos of coffee. The morning sky hung low and gray as I drove downtown, a steady drizzle slicking the streets. Columbus shimmered with that false cleanliness glass buildings always have, modern, reflective, detached. Northland Partners took up an entire floor of a tower that smelled of polished marble and disinfectant. The receptionist smiled the way people do when they've been trained to manage discomfort. "Good morning, sir. Do you have an appointment?" "No," I said. "Tell Jordan Brooks his father's here." Her smile flickered. Just a moment. While she called upstairs, I studied my reflection in the glass wall. Older than I remembered, shoulders curved inward, tie slightly off-center. Behind me, a man in a suit tapped at his phone, impatient. I felt invisible and exposed all at once. After a long minute, the receptionist said, "He'll see you now, Mr. Brooks." The elevator ride felt endless. I caught my reflection again in the chrome doors. Renee would have told me to stand straighter. When the doors opened, I walked through an office of quiet efficiency. The carpet muffled every step. Young faces glanced up from screens, then looked away. Jordan's door stood open, sunlight cutting through blinds across his desk. He looked up from his laptop, surprised but not rattled. "Dad," he said, setting the mouse aside, "you didn't call first." "I've been calling," I said. "You haven't been answering." He exhaled through his nose. "I've been busy." I noticed. I laid the folder on his desk. "You've been busy signing my name." His jaw tightened just slightly. "You came all the way down here for this?" "For this," I said, tapping the folder. He opened it, scanned the pages without expression. "Dad, it's not what you think." The city was clearing abandoned properties. I used Northland to secure redevelopment rights before someone else did. You'd still get a share when the sale goes through. "That's generous," I said. "How'd you manage my signature?" He met my eyes then, steady, professional. You gave me power of attorney years ago when Mom got sick. That form expired when she died. He shrugged. Digital systems don't really check that. It was just paperwork. Paperwork, I repeated, the word dry in my mouth. You took the ground your mother's buried next to and called it paperwork. His tone hardened. Dad, I'm fixing what you left behind. You let that neighborhood rot. I'm giving it a future. A future without its past. He leaned back, exhaling. You're stuck in nostalgia. That house isn't worth saving. This is business, not betrayal. Business ends, I said quietly. Family doesn't. He stood up, jaw tightening again. You think I don't care about family? I've been carrying it. You built memories. I'm building value. You built value with my name. He looked away then, the first break in composure. I could almost see the boy who used to wait for me by the fence after school, backpack slipping off one shoulder, but that boy was gone, buried under ambition. Dad, he said, softer now, you wouldn't understand. The world's changed. The world always changes, I told him. That's why a man's name has to mean something. Silence filled the office like fog. Beyond the glass wall, rain streaked the windows, blurring the city into smears of gray. Jordan's phone buzzed on the desk. He didn't answer it. I didn't come here to argue, I said finally. I came to tell you this ends now. You'll hear from me officially. He nodded once, jaw locked. Do what you have to do. I turned to leave. His voice followed me, almost reflexive. Dad? I paused at the door but didn't turn. I didn't mean to hurt you, he said. I was just trying to move forward. I looked back at him then. You can't move forward by erasing where you started. He didn't answer. The elevator ride down was silent except for the soft hum of the motor. I caught my reflection again, the same face, but the eyes looked steadier. Outside, the drizzle had turned to rain. People hurried past under umbrellas, heads down. I walked to the truck, folder under my arm, and sat for a long time before turning the key. Traffic crawled through downtown. Each stoplight reflected on the wet pavement like molten glass. My hand stayed steady on the wheel. I wasn't angry anymore, not in the wild way. I was focused. Halfway home, I pulled into a rest stop and poured the last of the coffee into the lid. It was bitter and cold, but it kept me grounded. I took Renee's note from my wallet, unfolded it, traced the ink again. Don't let anyone decide for you. I'm not, I whispered. Rain drummed on the hood, steady as a metronome. I thought about how betrayal doesn't arrive as thunder. It seeps in paper by paper until your silence signs for you. Not this time. When I finally pulled back onto the highway, the sky had gone darker. The windshield wipers beat a slow rhythm, clearing just enough space to see ahead. I wasn't sure what the next step was, lawyer, court, press, but I knew I'd take it. Jordan could have his offices and his language of progress. I still had a voice, and now I intended to use it. By the time I reached home, the rain had eased to a mist. I parked the truck, left the folder on the passenger seat, and sat for a moment longer. Through the windshield, the porch light glowed faintly yellow. I could almost hear Renee's laugh in the hum of the rain gutter, light and brief. I rested my hand on the folder, whispered into the quiet cab, "Now it's war." Morning arrived pale and cold, the kind of light that makes everything in the house look smaller. The news murmured low from the television, something about a redevelopment scandal in another city. Words like fraud and contract violations floated between the clink of dishes. I poured coffee, turned off the TV, and sat at the kitchen table. My notes from yesterday were still spread out like a crime map. City documents, emails, a list of names. Renee's note watched from the edge of the lamp, the paper curling at one corner. Miles's laughter came from upstairs, high and light. It hit me how much he sounded like Jordan at that age. Same unfiltered joy before the world started keeping score. Sienna came down the hall. hair tied up, wearing that half-calm, half-tired look that fills a house when everyone's pretending it's fine. "You didn't sleep," she said quietly. "I had work to do." Her eyes fell to the papers. "You're still going through those?" "I'm not going through them," I said. "I'm building something out of them." "Calvin," she sighed. "He's still your son." I folded one document neatly. "Then he'll have to meet me as a man." She hesitated, like she wanted to say more, then walked away. The sound of Miles's sneakers thumping down the stairs followed her. I stayed where I was, the coffee cooling in my hands. By late morning, I'd filled 3 folders, one for the city, one for Northland, one for my own sanity. My phone buzzed with a text from Pastor Green. "Lunch at Harold's?" I heard about the situation. He was one of the few people who still called without asking for anything. The diner hadn't changed in 30 years, same cracked booths, same waitress who remembered everyone's order, same grease gloss on the counter. Green sat by the window, gray hair tucked behind his ears, Bible closed beside his plate. "You look like a man carrying bricks," he said as I slid into the seat. "I am," I said, "just can't tell if I'm building or burying something." He smiled softly. "Maybe both." We ordered coffee. The hum of conversation filled the gaps. Finally, he said, "You can't pray away betrayal, Calvin. But you can choose who it makes you." "I'm not looking for vengeance," I said. "I just don't want to disappear." He nodded. "Then fight the right way. Truth has its own clock. It don't run on ours." I stared at the steam curling from my cup. "What if truth's already too late?" "Truth's never late," he said. "It just waits till you're ready to hear it." When I left the diner, rain had started to fall again, soft, persistent. I sat in the truck, hands on the wheel, not moving. Across the street, a young couple ducked under an umbrella, laughing like they'd just found the world brand new. I envied them for not knowing yet what time could take. Back home, the mailbox leaned slightly from last week's storm. Inside, among junk mail and flyers, lay a plain envelope. No return address, just my name written in small block letters. I took it to the garage, tore it open carefully. Inside was a folded memo on Northland letterhead. My name appeared halfway down the page under Property Transfer Approval, Expedited Status. But it wasn't my signature that froze me. It was Jordan's, dated 2 weeks before the meeting in his office. Below it, a second signature from a city liaison confirmed advance verification per redevelopment partnership clause. I read it twice, then a third time. The betrayal was bigger than family. It had a seal now. For a moment, I leaned against the workbench, eyes closed. The air smelled of metal and old sawdust. My heart didn't race. It slowed, steady as if clarity itself had weight. I slipped the memo into a plastic sleeve, added it to the folder marked City Proof, and turned off the light. At dusk, I drove without a plan. Rain blurred the streetlights into ribbons of color. The radio landed on a Motown station, Renee's favorite. Marvin Gaye's voice floated through static, low, and aching. The lawyer's office was closed when I arrived. The sign glowed faintly through the rain-streaked window. Samuel and Tate Legal Associates. I parked beneath the streetlight and watched droplets chase each other down the glass. The city felt distant, almost indifferent. I took Renee's note from my wallet, flattened it on the dashboard, and whispered, "You still guiding me?" The truck ticked softly as it cooled. I imagined walking inside tomorrow morning, handing over every file, every photo, every scrap of my name they'd tried to overwrite. I pictured the look on Jordan's face when the papers hit the table. No anger this time, just inevitability. Somewhere between thought and exhaustion, I dozed off. The tapping of rain on the roof became her voice in a dream. "Don't let them decide." I woke to silence. The rain had stopped, and the streetlight had gone out. The sky held that pre-dawn blue, the color between endings and beginnings. I started the engine, headlights sweeping across the empty lot. When I pulled into the driveway, the first birds were breaking the quiet. The house was dark except for the small lamp I'd left on in the garage. I went in, spread my papers across the workbench again. The printer waited, light blinking. I typed out a short letter addressed to the city attorney. To whom it may concern, I am Calvin J. Brooks, rightful owner of the property at 1287 East Larchmont Street, Detroit, Michigan. I do not consent to any transfer, redevelopment, or power of attorney filed in my name. Attached are supporting documents verifying fraudulent submission through Northland Partners. Respectfully, Calvin J. Brooks. The words looked small on the screen, but they felt like iron. I hit print. The machine whirred to life, slow and sure. The pages slid out one by one, warm to the touch. I pinned Renee's note above the desk, the ink faded but firm. The dawn light crept through the blinds, washing the room in silver. I stacked the pages carefully, clipped them together, and placed them beside the coffee mug. For the first time in weeks, my hands didn't shake. I whispered to the empty air, "We start here." The printer was still warm when I came back to the garage, as if it had sat up to keep watch. 2 stacks of pages waited, City Attorney, Redevelopment Board, and a third for Northland's registered agent. I clipped them, addressed the manila envelopes in a square, careful hand, and looked up at Renee's note pinned above the bench. The ink had faded, but the lines still held. Don't let anyone decide for you. At the post office, the bell chimed into an overcast morning. Certified mail, return receipts. When I signed, my name looked unshaken for the first time in months. I watched the envelope slide through the slot and felt a bolt seat in its strike plate. Back home, an auto reply waited. Your complaint has been received and will be reviewed within 10 to 15 business days. Dry, official, and real enough to cool my chest a few degrees. I filed it to City and let my breath even out. 10 to 15 days was the city's way of saying not yet. At noon, the doorbell rang. A courier held a flat packet like a tray. Signature here. Inside, a cease and desist from Northland's counsel warning me against defamatory assertions, tortious interference, and any presence at or near 1287 East Larchmont to be treated as trespass. Heat rose in my face, not a flare, but a furnace finding air. Sienna read over my shoulder and asked what happens if they're right. I told her it wasn't about right. It was about bigger. She rubbed her forearm, that nervous circle she draws when worry has no outlet, and told me to be careful. My phone buzzed. Vernon. His voice sounded like gravel in a tin can. Fence got new locks, he said. Lilacs ribboned like luggage. Send me pictures, I said. They came a minute later, grainy shots of a laminated placard cable tied to the fence, authorized entry only, a warning about cameras, and a thin orange ribbon looped through the lilac like a baggage tag. I saved the photos to Detroit, copied them to evidence, then again to a backup drive. You don't trust a single shelf when the floor is shifting. By mid-afternoon, the spin began. A sponsored post bloomed in my feed, Northland reviving blight with sunlit renderings of townhomes and patio tables. The caption framed people like me as obstructionists clinging to unsafe structures. In the comments, neighbors cheering, strangers sneering, and one anonymous account dropping a redacted screenshot implying I had already consented. The file name tucked in the corner marked it promotional, not legal, but the perfume still worked. What people inhale becomes what they swear they smelled. A small dizziness tilted the room. I sat, closed my eyes, and counted breaths the way the clinic taught me after Renee died. In on 4, out on 6. The tremor eased. Fear spins, warning points. I chose to follow the arrow. I needed quiet. I drove to the church and slipped into the last pew. Pastor Green stepped in from a side door, saw me, and didn't speak at first. He sat one pew ahead and let silence do half the work. When he finally spoke, it was only, "You don't have to be loud to be strong." I nodded. Words felt expensive. I spent as few as possible. Back home, I cleared the kitchen table and rebuilt the field into order. New labels, media, medical, witnesses. I started a timeline: date, event, source, file path. Every call got a timestamp, every action a line. I added Vernon's photos, the courier's letter, the auto reply, the sponsored post. I left a blank space for Jordan, because absence can be evidence. Miles wandered in from a nap, leaned his cheek on my arm, and asked, "What are you making?" "A story," I said. He nodded and went for a snack. Sienna lingered in the doorway, watching us, and something in her face softened into a shape I hadn't seen in weeks. Respect, or maybe relief that I wasn't breaking. Dusk gathered. I laid the 3 green receipts beneath Renee's note. The boxes for signature and date made a neat progression, like stepping stones across a dark creek. Outside, the porch light came on with its steady, homely thrum. I stepped onto the porch and let the night move around me. The air carried that cool, metallic smell that follows rain. I pictured the red brick house with its orange ribbon, the way small humiliations dress themselves as process. I thought of Jordan's silence, loud as any closing door. "I won't cross their fence," I said. "I'll cross their story." The words left no echo, and that was fine. Not everything has to bounce back to prove it landed. I went inside and shut off the lights. In the garage window, a square of moon hung like a pale stamp. Renee's note glowed against the pegboard. I locked the back door, slid the receipts into the top desk drawer, the one I'd labeled ARMOR, and set my alarm for early. Dawn is when paper moves best, when people who think they can tire you out are still sleeping. The printer cooled, the house settled. Somewhere deep, the furnace sighed. I listened until the sounds braided into something like a promise, not victory, but endurance. Enough for tonight. Morning light found the garage clean as a page. I laid a yellow legal pad on the bench and wrote a list in block letters. 1. Injunction prep. 2. Witness declarations. 3. Chain of custody for files. 4. Health record. Renee's note watched from the pegboard, the curl of its corner like a fingertip holding place in a book. I stacked the folders, City, Northland, Evidence, 01, and slipped a cheap digital recorder beside my wrench set. If I was going to tell this story, it needed a spine. The clinic opened at 10, scuffed linoleum, posters about tenants' rights, a printer jam blinking its red eye. At the intake table, a law student took my name, then guided me to a small room where a young attorney in a navy blouse and tired eyes introduced herself as Ava Nguyen. She shook my hand like a craftsman, firm and brief. "For an injunction, you need 4 things," she said, drawing a box on a legal pad. "Likelihood of success, irreparable harm, balance of equities, public interest. We build each like a wall." "I've got documents," I said, sliding the internal memo across, "and a forged power of attorney." Her pen stopped mid-scratch. "Authenticate both. Hash your digital files, log where and when you captured them, and we'll need a sworn declaration, what you saw, what you know firsthand." She showed me how to name exhibits, how to staple a proposed order, how to keep originals pristine. "Chain of custody," she said, underlining the phrase. "Date, device, location. If you edited a photo, keep the original. Make a mirror copy onto a clean drive." I drove to a discount store and bought an external drive with a plastic case. Back home, I labeled it Evidence 01 in black tape, then copied each file. Fence photos, the city notice, my call log, the Northland memo. I created a spreadsheet that listed hash values, long strings of numbers and letters that looked like the secret names of things. Each entry got a timestamp, a source, a handled by field with my name. It felt like laying floor joists. No one sees them later, but the room depends on them. At noon, I called Vernon and set the phone against a coffee mug so the camera would hold steady. Wind chimes clinked on his porch. He held up his pocket notebook while I recorded. He spoke slow with the dignity of a man who knows the weight of his own name. I saw Northland crews Monday and Thursday, he said. New locks. Clipboard had the word portal and Northland printed bold. Orange ribbon tied to the lilac. I'll put my name to what I saw, he added. Been doing that since '72. We scheduled a notary at the clinic for tomorrow. I emailed him a draft declaration and left lines for corrections. The recorder's tiny red light blinked approval. For the city, I needed more than a witness. I drafted a discreet note to Dawn, the clerk who had been kind without overpromising, requesting a neutral factual affidavit confirming that the file path displays Northland Portal as the submission origin. No comment on intent, metadata only. I read it twice and stripped every adjective. Facts carry farther when they aren't heavy. By late afternoon, I met Nora Delaney at a coffee shop 2 blocks from the clinic. She arrived with a tote full of FOIA forms and a half-battered camera. She listened more than she talked, the mark of a real reporter. I placed the internal memo and the lilac photo between us. The espresso machine hissed like a kind of skepticism. I don't print feelings, Mr. Brooks, she said. I print what I can prove. I took the stand and told it plain. I did not sign a current power of attorney. I did not consent to transfer. I learned of the filing when a neighbor called about demolition notices confirmed with the clerk, then received a cease and desist labeling me a trespasser at my own address. I described seeing the orange ribbon on the lilac in photos, the new locks, the sponsored posts calling people like me obstructive. I did not say the words I wanted to say about family. I kept to facts. I could feel Renee's hand on my shoulder, not to comfort me, but to square me. Northland's counsel stood with a small sigh. There is consent by course of dealing, Your Honor. Long-standing authority given to the son, repeated reliance by the city, and no irreparable harm, only delay. We challenge authenticity of the memo and the so-called clerk note. We ask the court to deny and allow redevelopment to proceed before further blight accrues. Ava did not raise her voice. There is forgery by course of convenience. The city's own metadata says the portal was used. The memo dates the intent. The plaintiff's testimony is clean, limited, credible. Irreparable harm is the loss of unique property rights and the erasure of consent. The equities favor pause. The public interest is procedure that can be trusted. The judge asked for the memo and the metadata. She read silently long enough for the room's humming lights to become a metronome. Mr. Brooks, she said without looking up, what would happen if activity proceeded this week? It would be gone, I said, not just the structure. The record of what happened to it. She set the papers down, one edge aligned exactly with the other. Order as follows, she said. Temporary restraining order granted in part. No transfer of title, no demolition, no entry beyond routine inspection by the city pending a 14-day return date. Both parties to preserve all records and communications. The city to hold action pending hearing. I decline to restrain public speech, but caution all parties. Keep commentary document-based. No defamatory characterizations. We will resolve facts in the evidentiary hearing. The sound I made wasn't relief, it was something quieter, like a knot loosening one turn. Ava squeezed my elbow. We collected the stamped order at the clerk's window and stepped into the hallway where the air felt less stale. Next steps arrived like a list. Subpoenas for the portal logs, she said, counting off on her fingers. Deposition notices for a narrow set. Who touched the file? Who okayed the memo? Vernon's affidavit notarized. Dawn's note formalized. We'll file your medical record under seal with a narrow HIPAA release. And I want those hash values printed and attached. They're ready, I said. At the vending machine, she handed me a bottle of water I didn't know I needed. You've got 14 days of discipline, she added. Win the next 2 weeks, not the whole. My phone buzzed while we stood there. A notification from the paper, TRO granted amid dispute over Detroit transfer, city to review portal filing. Nora had written it clean, no hero, no villain, just a record. A photo of the ribboned lilac, a shot of the courthouse steps with faces cropped out as we agreed, a line that the city had acknowledged ongoing review. The comments were a mix of suspicion and relief. It felt like a window unpainted for 1 hour of air. Another buzz, a text from Jordan. We need to talk. A minute later, I didn't think it would get this far. I stared until the words blurred into pixels. Then I typed, meet me with your lawyer present. I watched the status say, delivered, and put the phone away. We signed what needed signing at the clinic, and I thanked Ava the way you thank a person who lends you steadiness when yours is thin. See you in discovery, she said. At home, I laid the court's order beneath Renee's note. The seal caught the lamp and flashed briefly like a fish turning underwater. I called Vernon to thank him and scheduled tomorrow's notarization. I drafted a short, careful email to Dawn confirming that her metadata line would be attached as Exhibit G. I printed Nora's story and slid it into the media folder, not as celebration, but as proof that the story had escaped the spin for one day. Then I'll bring you proof. She studied the memo, traced the date with her finger. If this holds up, it's not just a family dispute. It's process. I'll seek comment from Northland and the city. You may not like what comes back. I already don't, I said. Do it anyway. We agreed on ground rules, documents over speculation, my name on the record, no surprise quotes. She asked for a timeline, copies of receipts, and the call log. I promised them by night. Outside, I took stock of the risk. Northland had already threatened defamation. Going public could tighten the vice. But silence had taken enough from me. Measured transparency felt less like exposure than like light through a window that had been painted shut. On the way home, a wave of tiredness tilted the road. I pulled into a lot and breathed until the horizon steadied. At the clinic, Ava had suggested including a doctor's note to show urgency without theatrics, evidence of strain, a line connecting stress to harm. I opened the patient portal on my phone, downloaded last month's visit, and saved it to Exhibit H, not a plea, a fact. Evening pressed its face to the windows when I returned to the bench. I worked by the lamp's clean circle, assembling the packet, verified complaint, exhibits labeled A through H, proposed order, a brief statement of points and authorities Ava had outlined with careful scaffolding. I drafted a notice to opposing counsel, plain and clipped. In the email to the clerk I wrote, emergency hearing requested on the basis of imminent, irreparable harm and ongoing process irregularities. Parties notified. I didn't embellish. Law is carpentry. Measure, cut, fit. The phone lit with a new message. Dawn had replied, I can confirm system metadata displays Northland Partners' internal portal as the submission origin for filing. Redacted case number. I cannot comment on intent, no signature line, just her first name. Enough. I added it as Exhibit G, then called the clinic to confirm. A volunteer clerk answered, rustling paper. She said they could stamp file the packet at opening and lodge the emergency request for the first motions calendar. Get you 8:45 a.m., she added. If accepted, Thank you, I said. Night settled. I opened the front door and let cooler air bleed into the hallway. On the porch, I signed my affidavit in slow strokes that didn't tremble, then pressed each page against a book to keep them flat. Inside, the printer coughed out the final copies, warm as bread. The house felt held. Sienna reading in the next room, Miles humming an invented tune, pipes ticking in their sleeves. Back in the garage, I clipped the packet and slid it into a blue accordion folder. I placed it beneath Renee's note and felt the weight travel into the wood. My phone chimed once. Hearing, 8:45 a.m. I set an alarm and laid out my jacket, my shoes, a pen with ink that wouldn't skip. I sat a long minute before switching off the lamp, watching the pale rectangle of the note glow above the bench. The day had not made me louder, it had made me precise. I had a wall of 4 parts and a door in it with my name correctly written. Tomorrow I would knock. I woke at 6 to the sound of the furnace turning over, a low breath in the ribs of the house. Coffee steamed in the dim kitchen while I laid the blue accordion folder on the table and opened the clasp. Exhibits A through H waited behind colored tabs, the chain of custody sheet clipped on top, 3 green postal receipts tucked into a clear sleeve like lucky bills. I pressed my thumb to Renee's note above the desk, ink thinned by years, message still thick, and whispered the line I'd been living by. Don't let anyone decide for you. By 7, I was dressed and in the garage, tying a steadier knot than my hands used to make. Sienna lingered in the doorway, arms folded into the cotton of her robe. Drive safe, she said. I nodded. She didn't ask for a promise I couldn't make. The courthouse sat gray against a grayer sky. Inside, the hallway smelled of old paper and sanitizer, a blend of eras. Lawyers clustered in low conversation, shoes ticking on terrazzo. I found the motions calendar posted on a corkboard and traced the list with my finger until I saw my name stacked under the case caption like a subtitle to my own life. Ava arrived with a binder thin as a blade in the same calm as yesterday. You did the work, she said, tapping the folder. Let the record carry it. We checked in with the clerk, took seats on a wooden bench, and waited while the room clicked from restless to ready. The courtroom itself was all rectangles, flag, clock, benches, the sharp edge of a lectern at center. The judge glanced over readers, voice brisk in the way of people who value time. Opposing counsel for Northland slid in 2 minutes before our case, smooth binder, practiced frown. He nodded at us without warmth. On the calendar, Brooks versus Northland Partners et al., the clerk called. Ava rose first. Your Honor, this is an application for temporary restraining order to prevent transfer or demolition tied to a disputed filing. 4 factors: likelihood of success, irreparable harm, balance of equities, public interest. Our showing is documentary. She moved through the tabs like a carpenter measuring twice. Exhibit A, forged power of attorney. Exhibit B, internal Northland memo dated prior to city submission. Exhibit C, clerk's metadata confirming origin Northland internal portal. D through F, photographs, timeline, certified mail. G, clerk's confirmatory note. H, medical record under seal establishing strain. The judge turned to me. Mr. Brooks, keep to what you personally observed. Night gathered in the windows. I took the order to the porch and read it again under the cone of the street lamp. The paper warmed in my hands, a small animal taking heat. It didn't say victory. It said time. The space to breathe, to build, to speak without being dragged from the room mid-sentence. In the hedge, the wind turned a few leaves. The sound was like pages moving forward. I set the order on the bench inside, clipped it to the timeline, and checked the alarm on my phone. 14 days on the clock. 14 chances to choose precision over fury. I switched off the light and stood a moment in the doorway, listening to the house settle. It sounded like faith, not belief in luck, but belief in work done right and words set down straight. Tomorrow would bring calls, subpoenas, maybe a meeting with my son across a table that made us both sit up. Tonight, I held a piece of paper that said I existed in law, not just memory. I breathed in, breathed out, and let time be the gift I'd asked. Late light flattened the city as I stepped into the clinic's small conference room. The table's varnish held a tired shine. A glass of water sweated a ring on a yellow pad. Ava set a pocket recorder between us, its red eye steady. Across from me, Jordan's jaw worked like he was chewing a decision. His attorney lined up a pen with surgical care. I felt Renee's absence like a second chair. Ava spoke first. Documents first. Feelings later. Her hands rested on the stipulation draft, tabs bright as flags. I unfolded my single page and read it clean. Withdrawal of any power of attorney claimed in my name, preservation of records and locks, no demolition, no stories faster than the evidence, a conservatorship with me as trustee, and clear rules for anyone who joins. I added the line that mattered. Family boundaries, respect before convenience. Jordan's attorney objected to any apology. Jordan didn't. He kept staring at the recorder like it could judge him. "I thought I was helping," he said. The words landed thin. "Meaning isn't permission," I answered. Ink made the point. We signed blue, not black, so the copy could never pretend to be the original. The recorder's red dot blinked twice and the room exhaled. Outside, I walked to the sanctuary and sat in the last pew. Light fell through stained glass in patient squares. Pastor Green slipped into the row ahead and did not turn. "Mercy isn't forgetting," he said quietly. "It's choosing what you remember first." I let the thoughts settle like dust in sunlight. I chose the truth, the work, the name I keep. At home, the porch held the day's leftover heat. I wrote 3 letters at the kitchen table, one to the city attorney confirming the stipulation and the joint preservation plan, one to Nora with a document-only update, one for Miles to open later explaining that a signature is a promise to your future self and a door you must still knock on. I dated each envelope and stacked them like steps. In the garage, I printed a stewardship charter, roof this winter, furnace by spring, plumbing after thaw, the garden beds restored, the lilac documented and left to bloom. From a small tin, I lifted the orange ribbon Vernon had mailed me. I set it in the toolbox tray, not as a wound, but a tag for future work. Dawn edged the windows while the printer cooled. I taped a fresh page under Renee's note and printed 4 square words that felt like studs in a wall. Speak, sign, keep, build. The house breathed once in its frames. I stepped onto the porch with the envelopes and the pen that never skips. The day was undecided, the air uncommitted. That was fine. I had a record, a charter, and time enough to stand in my name. I poured coffee, read the order once more, and felt the floor hold under me today. In the end, justice did not arrive as thunder, but as time, one moment by measured moment. Truth was not a shout, it was a record kept, a boundary spoken, a signature that finally matched the hand. When power moved too quickly, patience made a counterweight. And where grief tried to hollow the center, stewardship filled the space, tending what remains, repairing what can be repaired, and leaving a clear trail of how we chose to live. Thank you for watching and walking with this story. If a line or moment stayed with you, tell us why in the comments. Your voice helps others find theirs. Drop a timestamp for the scene that hit hardest and share where you're tuning in from. Tap subscribe and turn on notifications to join our community of thoughtful storytellers. Share this episode with someone who might need it today, leave a like, and keep the conversation going. Your reflections help us choose the next stories worth telling. We're grateful you're here.